The rain had been falling since morning. Not the gentle kind. Not the kind that makes you want to sit by a window with coffee and watch the world go soft and gray. This was the kind of rain that Manhattan reserves for its cruelest days. Cold, driving, relentless. The kind that finds the gap between your collar and your neck and runs down your spine like a warning. October rain. The kind that reminds you, in case you had forgotten, that the city does not care about you. She had been sitting on the steps of the Harrington Hotel since 11 in the morning. It was now nearly 4. Nobody had counted the hours on her behalf. Nobody had been watching. She was simply there when the doorman arrived for his afternoon shift. Still there when the lunch crowd came and went. Still there when the October sky deepened, from gray to the particular shade of dark that comes before evening in a city that never fully gets dark. A small girl, maybe 11, maybe 12. The kind of age that's hard to read on a child who has learned to hold herself still. Thin yellow jacket soaked completely through, dark hair flat against her face, a white cane across her knees. Her eyes were open. They were pale brown, almost amber, and they were beautiful, and they saw nothing at all. She had been blind since the day she was born. People moved past her the way people in New York move past everything that makes them uncomfortable, with practiced velocity, eyes finding the middle distance, the particular urban skill of not seeing that the city teaches everyone eventually. A man in a cashmere coat stepped over her cane without breaking stride. A woman in heels made a small sound of irritation and angled around her. A group of hotel guests pushed through the revolving door and let out a 3-second exhale of warm, gold-lit lobby air that smelled of wood smoke and expensive coffee, and the girl turned her face toward it, just slightly. The way a plant turns toward sun it cannot reach. Then the door sealed shut. She turned back toward the rain. She did not cry. She did not hunch her shoulders or curl into herself. She sat with a straightness that had no right to exist in a soaking wet child on cold stone steps, and she waited with a quality of patience that was not passive, and it was chosen, deliberate, the patience of someone who has decided to be patient, because the alternative is despair, and despair is a door she has decided not to open. Her name was Lily Carter, and she had come a very long way to sit on these steps. James Harrington was on the 23rd floor when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. He had told David, his assistant of 11 years, a man who understood exactly how James liked his day structured, that he was not to be interrupted before 6. The Dubai contracts were spread across the conference table in an arrangement that had taken 40 minutes to organize, and James was the kind of man who believed that $40 million decisions deserved uninterrupted silence. He looked at the caller ID. David. He answered because David knew better. If David was calling, something was wrong. "There's a child on the front steps," David said. "She's been there since before noon. She's blind, she's soaking wet, and security wants to know what to do." James pulled off his reading glasses. "What do you mean, what to do?" "Call social services." "We did. She refused to go with them. She told the officer she was waiting for someone and she wasn't leaving until she spoke to the owner of the hotel." Something moved through James's chest. He identified it as irritation and set it aside. "Did she say why?" "No, sir. She just said it was important." "She said—" David paused, and in 11 years of working together, David had never paused mid-sentence. "She said she'd wait as long as it took." James looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at the gray sky, at the rain running in rivers down the glass. "Give her a coat and bring her inside. Put her in the service lounge. Give her something hot to eat, and tell her I'll be down in an hour." "I tried, sir." "She won't come inside. She says she'll wait on the steps." He stood there for a moment longer, looking at the rain. Then he put his glasses down on the Dubai contracts, walked to the elevator, and went downstairs. He would think about this moment later, about how close he had come to not going, about how he had given David the instruction to bring her inside, had technically solved the problem from 23 floors up, and had been a single decision away from going back to his papers. He would think about the strange gravity that had pulled him to the elevator instead. He wouldn't be able to name it. He would only know that something in him recognized something, the way a compass needle swings toward north, before the hand holding it has decided to go anywhere. He saw her through the glass before he reached the door. She was smaller than he'd expected. The rain made her look almost translucent. The yellow jacket, The pale face, the dark wet hair. She was sitting completely still, her hands resting on the white cane in her lap, her face tilted up slightly as if listening to something in the rain that no one else could hear. James Harrington had stood in front of senators. He had testified before financial committees. He had fired 200 people in a single afternoon during the 2008 collapse and had not flinched. He was not a man who was easily affected by things he saw through window. He pushed through the revolving door and stepped into the rain. It hit him immediately, cold, immediate, soaking through his shirt in seconds. He had not grabbed a coat. He walked to the steps and stood in front of her, and she sensed him before he spoke, her chin lifted half an inch, her head angling toward him with that precise, practiced attention of someone who navigates the world entirely through sound. He crouched down so he wasn't standing over her. He didn't know why he did this. It was not a thing he typically did. James Harrington did not crouch, but it felt wrong to tower over her. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said back, calm, clear, not the voice of a child who had been crying, or a child who was afraid, the voice of a child who had prepared for this conversation. "I'm James Harrington. I own this hotel." "I know," she said. "I looked you up. My name is Lily." He studied her face. Up close, she was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional prettiness. She had strong bones, a serious mouth, and those amber eyes that aimed just slightly past him, calibrated to the sound of his voice rather than the location of his face. "How long have you been sitting out here, Lily?" "I'm not sure exactly. Since before lunch." A small pause. "I don't have a watch. Watches don't really work for me." He looked at her hands. They were shaking, not the dramatic trembling of panic, but the fine, continuous shaking that comes from cold that has gone past the skin and into the muscle. Her lips were faintly blue. "You told the officer you were waiting for someone." "Yes." "Who?" She was quiet for a moment. The rain fell between them. Then she said, "My father." He felt something shift in the air. He couldn't have explained it. He kept his voice even. "Is your father coming?" "He doesn't know I'm here," she said. He looked at her steadily. "That's a hard thing to wait for." "Yes," she agreed simply. "But I've waited for harder things." He believed her. "Will you tell me why you're here?" he asked, the real reason. She reached into the inside pocket of her jacket, and the only part of her that was still dry, and withdrew an envelope, worn at the folds, soft at the edges from handling. She held it out toward him, aimed precisely at the sound of his breathing. He took it. His name was written on the front. Not James Harrington, hotel owner. Not Mr. Harrington, just James. In handwriting he did not recognize and somehow felt he should. He opened it. The letter was 3 pages long. He read it standing in the rain, and he did not notice the rain. Her name was Sarah Carter. 22 years ago, Sarah Carter and James Harrington had been 29 and 31, respectively, and they had been in love in the reckless, oxygen-burning way that people are in love when they are young enough to believe. It will always feel that way. He had been building his first hotel. His entire identity wrapped up in concrete and glass and the terror of failure. And she had been the person who made him feel, for the first time in his adult life, that he might be more than what he was trying to build. Then she had told him she was pregnant. He had not been brave. That was the honest word for it. Not evil, not cruel, but not brave. He had been 31 years old, and he had been afraid of what it would cost him. And he had said things in that fear that could not be unsaid. And she had looked at him with a clarity that he had never forgotten. The look of someone seeing something exactly as it is for the first time. And she had walked away. He had told himself for 22 years that she had chosen to leave. He had gotten very good at believing this. The letter did not come at him with anger. There was no bitterness in it, which was worse than bitterness would have been. Bitterness he could have defended against. Instead, it was written in the voice of a woman who had made her peace with the past and was writing from the far shore of it, not to wound but to complete something that had been left incomplete. She was dying. Pancreatic cancer, moving fast. She had maybe 3 months, probably less. And she was writing because she was a mother, and mothers, even dying ones, especially dying ones, do not stop trying to protect their children. She told him about Lily. She told him that Lily had been blind since birth, and that this had never once slowed her down in any way that mattered. She told him that Lily had taught herself to navigate the subway system at 9 years old, that she had memorized The entire layout of their Queens apartment building, and could move through it in a blackout, faster than Sarah could with full sight, that she read voraciously, through audiobooks, and could hold an argument about history or literature or music that would leave most adults humbled, that she laughed at her own blindness sometimes, made jokes about it that were so precisely calibrated that only someone completely at peace with their own reality could make them. She told him that Lily had his jaw, his stubbornness, his particular habit of going completely still when she was working through a problem, as if she needed the outside world to stop so she could hear herself think. She told him that she was not writing to demand anything, not money, not presents, not guilt. She was writing because Lily deserved to know where she came from, and because Sarah believed, against evidence perhaps, but still believed, that there was something in James worth knowing, something real beneath the person he had chosen to become. The last line of the letter said, "I am not asking you to be a father. I am only asking you to be honest with yourself about what you lost. The rest is yours to decide." James stood in the rain for a long time after he finished reading. Long enough that Lily spoke. "Are you still there?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he said. His voice came out in a register he didn't recognize. "You don't have to say anything yet," she said. "I know it's a lot." He looked at her, at this 12-year-old girl who had ridden the bus across the city alone, navigating with her cane and her memory and whatever internal compass she'd built from years of moving through a world that wasn't built for her, who had sat in the cold rain for 5 hours, patient as stone, because she had decided this was worth doing and had done it. "How did you find me?" he asked. "After my mom died, the group home kept her things in storage. They let me go through them a few weeks ago." She smoothed the edge of her jacket. "I found the letter. I had someone read it to me. Then I asked them to look up James Harrington, New York. There were a lot of articles. The ghost of a smile. You're apparently quite important." "Apparently," he said. "I read about this hotel. It said it was your first one, your favorite one." She paused. "I thought if I was going to find you anywhere, it would be here." He thought about that. About a 12-year-old girl reading about him in articles, piecing together a map of his life from the outside, trying to locate the center of a man she had never met. He thought about what she had found, the deals, the expansions, the magazine profiles, and what she had not found, because it was not in any article. The 31-year-old who had stood in a Queens apartment and been afraid, and said the wrong things, and spent 22 years not looking back because looking back cost something he hadn't been willing to pay. He sat down on the steps beside her. It was an absurd thing to do. He was in a $4,000 suit, and the steps were running with rainwater. He sat down anyway. "Lily," he said, "I need to tell you something." She turned her face toward him. Those amber eyes, aimed just past his left ear, locked on the sound of his voice. "I knew your mother," he said. "A long time ago." Her breath changed slightly. "Just slightly. I think I'm your father," he said. The rain fell. She didn't move. Didn't reach for him. Didn't cry. Didn't react with any of the performances that the word father might have licensed. She sat very still, and he watched something move through her face. Not surprise, because she had known before she ever got on the bus, but something more complicated than surprise. Something that looked like a door being opened that has been shut for a very long time. And the feeling is not just relief, but also grief, because the opening of it means accepting how long it was closed. Then she reached out her hand. Not quite in the right direction, slightly to his left, calibrated to his voice rather than his body. He leaned toward it and took it. Her hand was ice cold, small, her fingers wrapped around his with a grip that was startling. In its strength, not desperate, not clinging but certain. The grip of someone who, having decided to hold on, holds on completely. "I know," she said softly. "You knew before you came." "Yes." "Then why—" He stopped. "Why do it this way? Why not just call?" She was quiet for a moment. The rain tapped against the stone steps around them. "Because I needed to know what kind of man you were before. I decided what I wanted." A pause. "I needed to know if you'd come outside." The simplicity of it hit him like something physical. He had almost not come outside. He had almost sent David with a coat and a phone number and a polite message. He had almost solved this from 23 floors up, efficiently, without getting wet, without sitting on steps in a ruined suit with his hands shaking around an old letter. without feeling any of it. He had been this close to never knowing, this close to going back to Dubai contracts and letting her wait until dark, until the social workers came back, until she gave up and got back on the bus and disappeared into the city. He had come outside, by something as thin and inexplicable as the feeling you get sometimes. The compass swinging north. I came outside, he said. You did, she said. They sat there together in the rain for another moment. His expensive suit was destroyed. He didn't move. My mom loved you, Lily said. Not as accusation. As fact, delivered simply, the way she delivered most things. She never told me that directly, but I could hear it when she talked. She had a way of going quiet when she was describing someone she loved, like the words weren't big enough and she was always reaching for better ones. A small pause. She went quiet like that sometimes. He closed his eyes. She wasn't sad about you, Lily continued. I want you to know that. I used to worry she was, but she wasn't sad. She was just complete. Like you were a chapter that ended the right way, even if it didn't. And the easy way. She turned her face slightly toward the sound of the fire she couldn't yet feel, some instinct pulling her toward warmth that was still 40 feet away behind glass. I think she forgave you before she wrote the letter. I think the letter was her way of finishing the sentence. James Harrington sat on the wet steps of the hotel he had built 20 years ago as proof that he was someone, and he wept. Not quietly, not with the controlled dignity of a man managing his emotions. He wept the way you weep when you have been carrying something for 22 years and someone finally gives you permission to put it down. His shoulders shook. His hands, still wrapped around Lily's, trembled. She didn't say anything. She didn't tell him it was okay or that he shouldn't feel bad or any of the things people say to stop someone from feeling what they need to feel. She just held his hand in her frozen fingers and let him feel it, all of it, every year of it. After a while, the rain began to lighten, just slightly, the heavy curtain thinning to something more like mist. Can we go inside now? Lily asked. I'm quite cold. A sound came out of him that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Yes, he said. We can go inside. He stood up and helped her to her feet. He watched how she found her footing, how she used the cane with small, sure movements, how she stood straight and ready. He didn't grab her arm or try to steer her. She didn't need to be steered. He just stayed close, her hand still in his, and they walked to the revolving door together. The warmth of the lobby came over them in a wave. Lily stopped just inside the door and tilted her face upward and breathed it in, warm air and wood smoke, and the faint smell of coffee and something floral from the arrangements by the front desk. She stood absolutely still for 3 full seconds, absorbing it, cataloging it with every sense available to her. There's a fireplace, she said. Yes. It's big. How can you tell? The sound, she said. You can hear how large a fire is by the way it moves. Small fires are quick and nervous. Big fires breathe slower. She tilted her head. This one breathes very slowly. He stood beside her and listened. He had owned this lobby for 11 years. He had walked through it thousands of times. He had never once stopped to listen to the fire. She was right. There was a rhythm to it, deep, slow, like something alive. David appeared at his elbow, clipboard in hand, the expression of a man who has witnessed something that has no category in his professional experience. James gave him quiet instructions. Dry clothes, hot food, a suite prepared, a doctor on call, and David disappeared. To make it happen, with the efficiency of someone who understood that this had become the most important thing happening in the building. James led Lily to the seating area nearest the fire. She sat on the edge of the sofa at first, formally, the way you sit in a place you're not sure you're allowed to be. He sat across from her. Do you have anyone? He asked. At the group home, is there someone who cares for you? Miss Patterson is kind, she said. She makes sure I have what I need. It's not, she chose the words carefully. It's not unkind. It's just not a home. How long? 2 years. Since my mom died, 2 years. He thought about 2 years. He had spent the last 2 years on the Dubai expansion, on a resort in the Maldives, on a partnership with a sovereign wealth fund. 2 years of his life accounted for in square footage and profit margins. And she had spent 2 years learning to call a group home not unkind. I want to fix that, he said. If you'll let me. She was quiet. Not the quiet of someone who has no response, but the quiet of someone evaluating. "What does that mean?" she asked carefully. "Fix it how?" "I don't know exactly. However you need." He paused. "I'm not going to pretend I know how to do this. I've never done this before. I don't have a script for it." "I don't either," she said. "Then we figure it out." She considered this for a long moment, her hands in her lap, her face angled toward the fire she could feel but not see. "I don't need money," she said finally. "I'm not saying that to be noble. I just mean that's not what's been missing." "I know. I need someone who—" She stopped. Started again. "My mom used to describe things to me. The way the light looked on water, the color of the sky before a storm. She knew I couldn't see it, but she described it anyway. Because she wanted me to have it. She said the world was too beautiful to let me miss it just because my eyes didn't work." A pause. "I need someone who thinks the world is worth describing." He looked at her, this girl who was his daughter, who had sat in the rain for 5 hours, who listened to fires breathe, who navigated a city by sound and memory and the stubborn refusal to be diminished by anything the world had withheld from her. "The fire," he said. "When we came in, you knew it was big before you'd felt it. Yes, your mother was right. You don't miss much." The smile that came across her face then was the first completely unguarded thing he had seen from her. Not the careful, almost smiles of before, not the measured responses of a child who has learned to protect herself, but a real smile, wide and sudden and young. "No," she agreed. "I don't miss much." When the hot chocolate arrived, he wrapped her hands around the mug himself, carefully, making sure her fingers found the warmth. She closed her eyes and breathed in the steam and made a small sound of involuntary contentment that made something in him ache with a tenderness he had no prior experience of. They sat by the fire for a long time. He told her about her mother, about the version of Sarah Carter he had known before he had failed her. He told her about the way Sarah laughed, about how she used to argue about music, about the afternoon they had spent in Central Park when it started to rain and they hadn't left because she had wanted to see the park go silver. He told her the good things, because there were good things, and Lily deserved to have them. Lily told him about the group home, about Miss Patterson's Tuesday spaghetti that was always slightly overcooked, about the other kids, their names and personalities assembled, for him with such precision that he felt he could see them, about the audiobooks she went through at a rate that impressed the librarians, about the way she had read about his hotels online, had someone described the photos to her, had assembled a picture of him from the outside. "Were you nervous?" he asked. "Coming here today?" She thought about it honestly. "Yes," she said, "but I was more nervous of not coming, of not knowing, of spending my whole life wondering who I was made of," she said, "and never having the courage to find out." He looked at his hands, his mother's hands. She was right. He could see it now, and he thought about courage, about what it cost and what it bought, about how this 12-year-old girl, with no sight and no money and no certainty of welcome, had demonstrated more of it in one October afternoon than he had managed in 22 years of running, away from a single conversation. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city was doing what New York does after rain, emerging from it brighter, harder. The wet streets throwing back the street lights and long gold reflections, cleaned briefly of itself. The world shining in spite of everything. Lily couldn't see any of it. He looked at her profile against the firelight. The serious mouth, his jaw, Sarah's coloring, and he said, The rain stopped. She turned toward the window, toward where she heard his voice looking. "What does it look like?" she asked. He looked out at the city. He made himself actually look. Not the glance of a man moving from one thing to the next, but the full attention of someone who has been asked to see on behalf of someone who cannot. He looked at the wet streets and the gold light and the way the city rebuilt itself after water, shining and relentless and indifferent and somehow still beautiful. "The streets are black and wet," he said, "and they're reflecting every light in the city back up at the sky, like the city is trying to give the light back." He paused. The cars are moving again. Yellow taxis, steam coming up from the grates. He paused again, finding his way into it, learning the language she had asked him to speak. "There's a man selling chestnuts on the corner with a little orange cart. The smoke from it goes straight up because the wind stopped with the rain." She was listening with her whole face. "The sky is that color between dark and dark," he said. "You know how it gets after rain, not night yet, but not day. Like the sky is deciding. He stopped, looked at her. Your mother would have known what to call that color. She would have, Lily agreed softly. She always knew. They were quiet for a moment. I'll learn, he said, to describe things the way she did. I won't be as good at it, but I'll learn. She turned toward him, those amber eyes finding him precisely, aimed at the center of his chest. Okay, she said. One word, quietly, but in it was everything. The agreement, the beginning, the door opening from both sides at once. James Harrington, who had built his life on the premise that everything important could be measured, sat in the firelight next to his daughter and felt the full, immeasurable weight of what had almost not happened. What one decision? The elevator instead of the desk, the steps instead of the phone, the crouching down instead of standing over, had saved. He reached out and put his hand over hers where it rested on the mug. She turned her hand over and held his. Outside, New York kept going. Loud, bright, indifferent, magnificent. The chestnut cart sent its smoke straight up. The taxis moved in rivers of yellow. The wet streets gave the light back to the sky. And inside the oldest hotel James Harrington had ever built, a blind girl who had ridden the bus. Across the city on Faith sat by a fire and finally, for the first time in 2 years, felt the particular warmth of being somewhere she was supposed to be. She didn't say it out loud. She didn't need to. Her father was already learning to read the things she didn't say.